In this video, we take you inside the chilling final moments of those who faced execution in February 2025. From their last meals to their final words, we uncover the haunting details of their crimes and the justice that followed. What goes through a person's mind in their final minutes? What do they choose as their last act of defiance or remorse? Stay with us as we reveal the stories behind their fates. Demetrius Terrence Frazier. On November 27, 1991, Frazier forcibly entered the apartment of 40-year-old Pauline Starks Brown. After waking her at gunpoint, he demanded money and then sexually assaulted her. Despite her pleas for mercy, Frazier shot her before stealing her belongings. Months later, on March 8, 1992, in Detroit, Michigan, he attempted another assault, this time targeting 14-year-old Crystal Kendrick. He held her captive in an abandoned house, and when she attempted to escape, he shot her, ending her life. Shortly after, Frazier was arrested in Michigan and confessed to both murders. In 1996, he was convicted in Alabama and sentenced to death. In 2018, he opted for execution by necropsia, a controversial method recently introduced in Alabama. The night before his execution, he requested a last meal from Taco Bell, ordering multiple burritos and a Mountain Dew soda. On February 6, 2025, the state of Alabama carried out his execution using nitrogen gas. At 6:36 p.m., Frazier was declared dead. His last words were an apology. "First of all, I want to apologize to the friends and family of Pauline Brown. What happened to her should never have happened." James Dennis Ford. In 1997, Ford invited Greg and Kimberly Mollery on a fishing trip, but his true intentions were far darker. During the trip, Ford shot Greg in the head with a .22 caliber rifle before attacking him with an axe. Kimberly was also struck in the head and sexually assaulted before being murdered. The couple's 22-month-old daughter was left trapped in a truck for over 18 hours, exposed to the elements and covered in her mother's blood. Ford was convicted of multiple counts of murder, assault, and child abuse. The sheer brutality of the crime left a lasting impact, with the court upholding his death sentence despite numerous appeals. On February 14, 2025, Ford was executed at Florida State Prison. He was granted a last meal and requested steak, macaroni and cheese, fried okra, sweet potato, pumpkin pie, and sweet tea. When asked for his final words, he remained silent. However, prison officials later revealed that Ford had written a final note that simply read, "Hugs, prayers, love. God bless you all." Richard Lee Tabler. In November 2004, Richard Lee Tabler orchestrated a series of brutal murders in Killeen, Texas. He and an accomplice, Timothy Don Payne, lured nightclub manager Mohammed Ramuni under the guise of selling sound equipment. Once there, they ambushed him, shooting both Ramuni and his friend, Zed. 2 days later, Tabler targeted two teenage nightclub employees, Amanda Benefield and Tiffany Lorraine, believing they had implicated him in the murders. He killed them without hesitation. Following the crimes, Tabler taunted the police with phone calls, issuing threats and admitting his guilt. He was swiftly arrested and sentenced to death. On February 14, 2025, Tabler was executed in Texas. In his final moments, he expressed remorse, apologizing to his victims' families. "Not a day goes by that I don't regret my actions. I had no right to take their loved ones, and I ask and pray that one day you find it in your hearts to forgive me." His final words were a plea for redemption that would never come. Marion Bowman Jr. On February 16, 2001, 20-year-old Bowman had a dispute with 21-year-old Candy Louise Martin over a debt. The argument turned violent when Bowman shot her multiple times in a secluded wooded area. He then dragged her body, placed it in the trunk of a car, and set it on fire in a remote location. Just hours before, he had chillingly warned her, "You'll be dead before nightfall." His cousin, James Taiwan Gadsden, testified against him, stating that he witnessed the crime and that Bowman had premeditated the murder. Despite Bowman's claims of innocence and allegations of concealed evidence and racial bias in his trial, he was sentenced to death in 2002. Before his execution, Bowman was given the choice of a last meal. He requested fried seafood, wings, chicken strips, onion rings, banana pudding, German chocolate cake, and cranberry pineapple juice. On January 31, 2025, he was executed by lethal injection in South Carolina. As the chamber curtain opened, he briefly glanced at his attorney, then at the ceiling before shutting his eyes. When asked for his final words, Bowman stated, "Death row inmates may be labeled as the worst, but we have all changed since that moment that cost us everything. I know Candy's family suffers, and rightfully so. If my death brings them peace, then maybe it serves some purpose. I hope they find it." Stephen LaWayne Nelson. On March 3, 2011, at the age of 24, Nelson entered North Point Baptist Church in Arlington, Texas, with the intent to rob it. Inside, only Reverend Clint Dobson, 28, and Secretary Judy Elliott, 69, were present. Nelson, already on parole for a prior assault, mercilessly attacked them. Dobson was brutally beaten, strangled with a computer cable, and suffocated with a plastic bag. Elliott was left with severe injuries, including facial fractures and a brain hemorrhage, but survived after a prolonged recovery. After the crime, Nelson stole Dobson's laptop, Elliott's credit cards, and her car. He used the stolen cards to purchase clothing and jewelry, selling the laptop for cash. His careless mistakes led to his swift arrest, with police identifying him through fingerprints and blood evidence on his shoes. Initially, another suspect was detained, but charges against him were later dropped. Nelson was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to death in Texas, where the death penalty is strictly enforced. On February 5, 2025, Nelson was executed by lethal injection at the Huntsville State Penitentiary. Texas does not allow inmates to choose a last meal, so he was given the standard prison meal. Just before his execution, Nelson turned to his wife, Helen Noah DuBois, who watched from the witness room, and told her he loved her. DuBois, permitted to bring a white service dog into the viewing area, nodded in acknowledgement. As the lethal injection process began, Nelson stated, "I'm not afraid, I'm at peace, let's ride, Warden." His final words were simply, "Love," before his body trembled and then went still. He was pronounced dead at 6:50 p.m. Central Standard Time, 24 minutes after the injection.